Yes, you know.
He didn't beat Chicago.
Yeah, he did many times.
Not as a Buccaneer.
I can see if you were like a Colts fan. I'm sure
All
Peyton
sports,
Manning
all
wished this would
plays.
have happened 10 years ago.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, then I'm in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
All right. What is up, everyone? We are here at ASAP Network with extremely breaking news. Tom Brady himself has officially announced after 22 years of being in the NFL that he has officially retired, which is extremely big. This man has played literally since football has began, it feels like, and just never freaking loses, like ever. And he's finally decided to retire. I'm gonna start with you, Ray. What are your thoughts on this as far as Tom Brady deciding to step away from the game? Do you think it's the right move, or do you think Tom should try to run it back one more time? Maybe not with Tampa Bay, but maybe with another team. What are your thoughts?
I think, man, it's a lot to kind of digest in the short period of time we have. I will say everything I've heard in this last week has led to this. So I'm not surprised because all the reports were leading that way. Tampa Bay was saying they'd be shocked if he came back. So the fact that this has come out and as quickly as it has, shortly after Ben said his or announced his retirement, I think this is something to me, it says it's something that's been on his mind for a while. Like this didn't just happen. I think the loss may have exacerbated it. The way he lost, I think that might have been the only thing that delayed this. But everything after that press conference, everything since then has led us down this path. So for me, I'm not terribly surprised. I do appreciate to a certain extent that it happened today and not tomorrow when the games are on or not leading up to the Super Bowl. But he also didn't drag it out because there was more and more stuff starting to leak out.
Right.
I kind of expected it differently. I think most of all of us have seen it through a tweet. I thought we would have had some kind of video. He's been a lot bigger on the social media. I would have thought he put something together, although Ben put something together after his announcement. So maybe this will come in the next coming days. But it's surprising. It's the end of an era. I don't know if Belichick will follow him shortly if Mac Jones turns out not to be what he thought he would be. But it's kind of that point, I guess, in my life where all the greats of my childhood and young adulthood are now reaching their end. And now the craze is turning into their kids. So I know we kind of talked off Mike. LeBron will probably be the next massive retirement. But yeah, it's going to be different for me to see 22 years. I'm 33 years old. So the majority of my life, he's been a relevant force in football. And now that won't be there. I don't think this is a wait and see until where else he goes. I don't think, from all accounts, San Francisco saying they're moving on from Jimmy G, win, lose, or draw. I don't think Tom's going to come back for that. I think this is it. So more shouts to him. He went out on top, led the league in passing, touchdown passes, proved that he could still play. I think he made a family decision.
Okay. What about you, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Ray hit it on the head. 33 years of Ray's life. More than half of it has been with Tom Brady. And for me, I'm 21 turning 22. So I've never seen Tom Brady not in the NFL. Like that's something I'm going to have to get used to. That's something that was my first reaction is I've never had a Tom Brady-less NFL. Like that's just the reality of it. Maybe the year he tore his ACL, but even then he was still there. You really look at it and you hate the guy, but you love the guy. And at some point, I think every single person who wasn't a New England Patriots fan hated Tom Brady. That's just the narrative. And the same thing with LeBron James. At some point, you hate him. But you hate him for all the right reasons. You hate him because of what he is and that trademark that is championship type football, championship type basketball. And once I started respecting greatness and I just started to have a better understanding of who Tom Brady was, I started to truly enjoy football a lot more. And I wish I could have had it from the start, because I hated that man with a passion my whole childhood. Because every time he played the Bears or anytime he'd play anybody, it was like Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. But once you start to realize like the validity to it and what this man meant for the game, I truly do believe that this guy is the greatest of all time. I don't think anybody's ever going to catch him. As much as I would love that to be Justin Fields or somebody else coming out of one of my favorite classes, it's not. It's not. It's never going to be Rodgers. It's never going to be Montana. It's never going to be Elway or any of those guys. This guy is in a class of his own. Unlike LeBron, unlike Babe Ruth, like Tony said the other day, and Mike Trout and many other leagues, Wayne Gretzky. The list goes on and on of just different leagues and different narratives. But I think in football there is a clear-cut understanding that this man is the greatest of all time. And it was just an honor to be able to watch that as a fanatic, as a fan. It was, I mean, it's upsetting. It really is. Now, in all seriousness, like, I don't know what it's going to be like. I think, especially for Tampa, and we can get into it in a little bit, but I don't know what this means for the league. I don't know if this is going to be a positive thing, that someone's going to be able to take that mantle, kind of revamp the face of the NFL. That being either Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or someone along those lines. But I definitely do think that it could be a hit or a miss. It really could. This could make the NFL better, because there is, Rodgers is leaving. It's just the new faces. Big Ben's leaving. Rodgers is leaving presumably in a couple of years, not now. But Brady's leaving. The old guys are gone, and it's a new era. That can either be a great thing or a horrible thing, and I guess we just have to wait to see.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'm not gonna lie. As a fan, I am ecstatic that Tom Brady is retiring. I've said it a lot on the shows throughout. I cannot stand Tom Brady as a professional football player, but I do like him as a person. I've seen a lot of things that he does off the field. I've seen a lot of things that he, has even done on the sidelines for kids and different players and stuff like that. So I think as a person, I think he's great. But as a professional, I'm extremely happy that he's retiring. It is going to be different, though. I'm kind of in the same boat as Ray. I'm about to turn 27. So, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen an NFL without Tom Brady in it. And I agree. I don't think anybody's ever really going to ever catch up to him. Mahomes is an extreme maybe, and I don't want to say that as a definitive because it's still early on in his career. Right. He could go, two or three more seasons, people figure him out, and then it's game over. So Tom really accomplished something that I don't think we're ever going to see another quarterback ever accomplish. I don't know if we'll ever see another quarterback in our lifetime that wins 7 Super Bowls, that passes for the amount of yards, because he passed for over 80,000, over 600 passing touchdowns. The least amount of interceptions you could probably ever see a quarterback throw. He's been sacked the most, so I don't know if anybody will ever break that, especially since Big Ben is out. Russ, maybe, if he stays in Seattle, but we'll see. And much like Damian actually brought up in this question, do we think that he'll pull a Brett Favre move and come out of retirement? I don't think that's the case. I think for Brett was never really one of those you knew to put the amount of money and time that he put into his body as far as working out and taking care of it like Tom has. And that's why Tom was able to play at such a high level for so long. You could tell in Green Bay they wanted to move on from Brett Favre. He was getting old. And then also Favre didn't want to do training camps. Favre didn't want to really do preseason. That's why he was retiring and coming back shortly before all these seasons started. So I don't really see Tom doing that. To me, Tom doesn't really have a reason to. I mean, again, you've won 7 Super Bowls. You have records that I don't think anybody is ever going to beat for a very, very long time. So to me, there's really no reason that Tom would actually need to come back out of retirement. And now I'm gonna pose the question: where do you think the Buccaneers go now from here? Because they were able to bring everybody back last year, but we had talked about this in a show a couple nights ago. The Buccaneers are going to be kind of strapped for cash. They're not going to be able to pay everybody now. Now there's a big question mark at quarterback. Who do you go out and get? This is not a quarterback heavy draft. There's not going to be a lot of free agent quarterbacks that you can really trust to push you forward. So Mike, where do you think the Buccaneers go from now? Having all this star power that they're probably going to lose because you don't have Tom Brady there anymore.
Right. And I think we're missing on something big. I think we're not having the open conversation. I think we're not being real with ourselves. I can't believe no one's brought it up. You didn't just lose Tom in this; you lost Gronk too. There is no shot that Rob Gronkowski is coming back, in my eyes, at least in my personal opinion, without Tom Brady. He is the sole reason that Gronk came out of retirement. Tom forced his hand to come out. He got one more championship. And then this year we saw him have punctured lungs, broken ribs, a messed up back. We've seen him have injuries on injuries that have been detrimental to his career. So I don't see Rob Gronkowski coming back. And then I also don't see Chris Godwin coming back. So I think there are a lot of things that are going to go into this, especially for Chris, having the ACL injury. I think he's just going to go after the most cash possible. Like Tony said, they're kind of strapped on cash right now. And then the fact that Tom Brady's not there, Gronk isn't there, it's definitely going to be something to where it's like my boy Scotty Miller might be the number 2 option next year. Shout out my boy Scotty. But for a quarterback situation, I think, he spent a year with Sean Payton. He learned a lot. He looked a lot better. He looked a lot more conservative, I guess is the right word. I think you go back with Winston on a 1-year deal and you see what you have there. Kyle Trask, to me, is not ready by any means. I think he's going to be a solid quarterback one day. I don't know if it's going to be a franchise quarterback, but I think he's definitely going to be serviceable. There's other guys out there, though. Someone who's torched the Bucs multiple times is Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky's thrown 6 touchdowns in a single game against the Arians and the Bucs. Granted, it was in 2018, but I think that's a viable and cheaper option for that kind of 1-year window gap. I think Teddy Bridgewater costs you too much money. I think Jimmy Garoppolo costs you too much money. Whereas with Winston, tore his ACL, it's a familiar place. You can get him on a cheap deal, a team-friendly deal. Mitchell Trubisky, another guy you can get on a cheap deal, team-friendly deal. Not to say he's the answer and that's going to get you winning football, but it's definitely something to where you don't want to throw Kyle out there if you truly don't think he's ready. And I haven't heard one person say the name Kyle Trask since they drafted him. And that's just the reality of it. And I get Tom Brady was that guy. So you're not going to bring up Kyle. There's no reason to bring up Kyle. But I haven't even heard positive things about Kyle in training camp. And that's the craziest part about it is I haven't heard negative things either, though, Tony. Don't get me wrong. But it's the fact that I've heard nothing is where I really think this kid hasn't been getting any reps because it's been Tom Brady solely, and rightfully so. But I kind of want to pose this question to Ray, too, because I want to get his opinion on it. With the Winston situation, is that something Winston would even want to do, is coming back?
So we've jumped a bit, so I'll answer that and then I'll kind of address some of the other stuff with the Bucs. I look at somebody like Kirk Cousins, or Derek Carr that might be out there. I think those would be better fits if the management team determines this is a retooling. And based on the money, I don't know how that looks. I'm not enough of a cap guy to say what they can and can't do. I know they had a bunch of people, I think, on 1-year deals, the Sues, the JPPs, the Leonard Fournettes, Godwin. Some of the others already had got paid. So I think they may have a lot coming off the books as well, but not enough to bring in a bunch of guaranteed money without all the finagling.
Right.
I don't think the quarterback of the future is on that roster. And if I'm an NFC South GM right now, I'm ecstatic because that division just became, to me, wide open. Yes. If I'm Atlanta, I'm going to Calvin Ridley and saying, hey, I don't know what you got going on, but we saw what I can't think of the tight end that they drafted this past year.
Kyle Pitts.
What Kyle Pitts was able to do. Maybe Matt Ryan is reinvigorated to make a run. So I think the NFL, but definitely the NFC, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, now I might revisit going to Denver, and now I'm trying to look at an NFC team. Right. Maybe he follows the Brett Favre model and goes to Minnesota and replaces Kirk Cousins. I just think the whole dynamic shifts. I think Dallas is looking at this as a win as well. So I think there's just a ton. There will be a bunch of dominoes that fall now that this is kind of out of the way. Right. And people that maybe felt, we got to go through Tampa again next year. They don't have to do that anymore. I don't think anybody looks at that Tampa roster and what would come back. Right. And I think the part that's understated a lot about Brady is the type of teammate he is. Right. As much as people don't like Tom Brady for whatever reason, and I would like to have you guys expand more on that because I've never really disliked Brady. I didn't like Belichick. I thought he was a jerk of an interview similar to Popovich. But Brady, for all accounts, I never really had an issue with. But I think what you saw with Gronk, who was willing to leave New England and come out of retirement, and the countless veterans like the Indomitious, the premier veterans that were willing to take less money just to play with him and have spoke so highly of him, I think that's going to be missed too. So I think if I'm Bruce Arians going back into that locker room now, those people ain't taking pay cuts. The people that sacrificed to come back this year, you're not getting that same, level of amenability or being amicable to taking less money because Brady's not here. Right. So I think it'll have a huge shockwaves, definitely in that organization. I would imagine they knew this, so they've been kind of trying to put feelers out. But I think Tampa Bay's a 500 team next year, unless they go get a premier quarterback. Russell Wilson, I don't know that Sierra wants to be in Tampa. It's not cold like Seattle, but it's not big market. So I think they got their hands full, and I think the NFC is definitely far more optimistic about what they can do because they've seen Rodgers fail again. So I think that instills confidence. Now Brady's gone. I think it's wide open. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do in the draft also. If they draft a quarterback early, I think that tells you everything you need to know about Trask. But free agency is going to be very, very interesting for Tampa Bay. And that also could flood the market with a bunch of other really top-tier talent that maybe people didn't think they could get as well. So this will have huge, huge impact on this NFL offseason. And the cap went up, so there's more money. Like, this is going to be crazy.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I definitely agree with the whole NFC South thing because really you think about it, the NFC South was kind of open for the most part. Really the last few years, you had Breeze.
Like every year nobody was winning more than 2 years in a row or something like that for a while.
Yeah. I think the last back-to-back one was the Saints. And that was last year. The Saints had won it back-to-back. So I definitely agree. I think the NFC South is wide open. I think if the Panthers can get their coaching situation figured out and their quarterback situation figured out, I think the Panthers could be one of those teams that maybe sneaks in. It's kind of the powerhouse of the NFC South. The Saints are too much over the cap, and I think they're going to struggle financially. And then the Falcons, they need to get a run game established. The wide receiver is a big question mark. Tight end, they're solid. And then defensively, they need to get set. So, I mean, really, to me, it's still going to be Tampa. No matter what the quarterback situation is, I think overall coaching wise and still talent wise, I think Tampa will still be one of the better rosters. To kind of answer your question about why professionally I'm not a big fan of Tom Brady, to me, there has to be a balance. Yes, you are probably one of the greatest football players to ever play. You're one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. But I won't ever call you the GOAT of the sport. And I say that just because of there were times that he had that very poor attitude that if it was anybody else, they would be, crucified in the coverage for, people kind of reach a little bit as far as the Super Bowl, the fact that he's never shaken Nick Foles' hand. He didn't shake Nick Foles' hand after the Super Bowl loss. He didn't shake Nick Foles' hand when he beat him on the Bears in 2020. It's like, I kind of get it if it's a regular season game. It doesn't really mean a lot. It happens, but the Super Bowl, to me, that's one of those you at least need to acknowledge, hey, you guys also got here. You just happen to be the better team. And Tom has been on, the opposite side of that. He's been a part of those teams that, he happened to get the ball last and he took advantage of it. So to me, that was one big thing. I'm like, I lose respect for Tom when it comes to that. Like, no, man, just you lost. It happens. It happens. You've been on the receiving end. At least show the person respect for it. And then I've seen Tom just throw a lot of just grown man temper tantrums over just stupid stuff. I mean, I watched him throw a temper tantrum when the 49ers were rolling with Colin Kaepernick and they were beating the Patriots. The Patriots finally got some momentum. 49ers called a timeout and Tom Brady lost his mind. And I'm like, dude, they called a timeout. Like, you've done it. Like, calm down. And kind of the same with the Saints game when they, lost, 9-0. It was like, it happens, dude. Like, I know it's frustrating. It's a game of passion, but you're still a professional at the end of the day. Like, right. It's not that deep to me personally. I do agree though. As much as I don't like Tom Brady, it's one of those. I do kind of like the Tom story in the fact of he was with the Patriots for 20 years. He's with Belichick for 20 years. Everybody was like, any quarterback can go in there and they can win a Super Bowl because of Belichick's system. Because Matt Castle proved that. I mean, the dude went 11-5 in the Patriots system, and we all know Matt Castle was not a phenomenal quarterback. But then we were kind of proven wrong with, Cam Newton the very next year and I don't think that's necessarily Cam's fault. I just think that system is not built for Cam. Particularly had you put another quarterback in, the Patriots probably would have still been vying for the playoffs. Don't know how far they would have gone, but I think they would have been vying. And I do kind of agree with what you said, Ray. I think I think especially after this year, if Josh McDaniels leaves the Patriots and he loses that offensive system, how does Mac Jones develop after that? And I think I would say give it 2 more years. By 2024. Depending on how the franchise is headed, I could see Bill definitely saying, you know what, I'm done. I've done everything I can do. There's nothing really I can more that I can add to this. Let's see. I don't think Buccaneers fans will leave. They've always kind of just been there in silence. They're kind of like Lions fans or Jets fans or Giants fans if you're Freddie. They're there. They exist. They are proud of their teams, but it's hard to kind of root for a team when they've been bad pretty consistently for 3 or 4 years. You'll see them in the cities, and they will pop up an occasion, but it's hard to root for something when you're like, I don't really have much to cheer for. So I think Tampa Bay fans will still be there. They'll probably ride this Super Bowl for a really long time, just like Eagles fans will, because they finally won one. So it will happen for sure.
So, Tony, real quick, and we can get to, I want to speak to this comment specifically with Damian. But does Brady get his number retired in Tampa, bringing him a championship?
Ooh.
Ring of Honor, anything like that?
Maybe the Ring of Honor. I don't know if he did enough in his short amount of time to get his number retired. Because, I mean, that you did do a lot and you won a Super Bowl, but I don't think it really deserves to be retired there. Because, I mean, think about it. Chris Godwin was solid for him as number 12 until he switched to 14 because Tom showed up. So, I mean, it's a big impact. I think now we all know he's for sure going to have his number retired in New England, as he should. But Tampa, no, I don't think he really merited that much to kind of deserve getting it retired there.
Right. I think of that the same way I think of the Bulls. Like, no one knows that Dennis Rodman didn't have his jersey retired. He was there for 6 years and won 3 championships. So it's the same conversation, Ray, to where it's like you just weren't there long enough to be able to.
Did you just compare Tom Brady to Dennis Rodman?
When you look at the rings, I'm saying if this man has 3 rings and still doesn't have his number retired, like that's the reality to it. He's one of the best defenders the Bulls ever had. He's been there, he's done it, and he never got his jersey retired. So for Tom to only have one, and Ray, let's be real here. Let's be real about it. You went to 1 NFC championship game and you won 1 Super Bowl there. That's perfectly fine. But we've seen people do that all over the place. I mean, are we going to retire Antonio Brown? Are you going to retire Gronk's number there?
No.
Was Gronk the reason they won the championship?
You could say he was. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
He was part of it. Because I mean, you got to think about
Tom Brady was the leading force that brought them a championship.
That number 1 defense wasn't.
And who?
That number 1 defense was just nothing.
Okay, you can say that, but let's be real. What are we talking about here? We're talking about quarterbacks and championships.
Right, but what I'm saying is you were there for 2 years, bro.
Like Robert Horry is never going to have his number retired anywhere, and he has 7. So
Right.
I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm simply asking, given the amount of championships that franchise has, and he was instrumental in half of them, should his number be retired?
I hate that. Half of them. It's 1, bro. Like at the end of the day, like
it is what it is.
I hear you. But at the end of the day, you were there for 2 years. Like I said, like Ring of Honor, sure. I think that's definitely something Tom deserves, and the culture he instilled is definitely something valid. But honestly, like it's just, to me, I don't see why they do it. I just don't.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like I said, he wasn't really there long enough. I mean, it was like, And I'm actually looking at the quarterback that won.
I think it was Brad Johnson, right?
Was it? Yeah, the their first Super Bowl, and he's number 14, and they didn't retire that one. And I mean, that was their first ever Super Bowl in franchise history, especially after being, one of those bottom feeder teams for like years. They had one of the worst winning records of all time. So I mean, like I said, Tom made a big impact in Tampa Bay. I could even see them maybe doing like what, because if you look at Steelers, you look at Dallas. There's another team that they don't retire numbers, but they just kind of keep them out of circulation.
Right.
I can maybe see them keeping 12 out of circulation now, unless Chris Godwin comes back, and then he might be like, "Hey, I want my number 12 back."
Right.
In which
That
case,
could be part of the negotiation because everybody in Tampa now has a whole lot more leverage as well. All those free agents, unless you want to go back to oblivion, you're gonna pay us. So,
and that's why, like to your point earlier, Ray, I think that's why he did it now. I think that's why he didn't draw it out, is because he's such a good teammate. He's not going to give the false narrative of telling all these guys that he's going to come back, because then at the end of the day, these guys are going to sign contracts expecting Tom Brady to be there, and then he's not. But I do agree with Tony too. Like in Chicago, number one, it's Derrick Rose. Like we don't care who else it's going to be. We're not retiring the number, but no one has worn number one since Derrick Rose, and it's not going to change. Like that's just what they've said. That's what we've all, found that is going to stay and remain that way. I don't know if his number will ever be retired, like we're talking about now. Even with Derrick, I know it's a different conversation, but he was there over 10 years. He's the hometown kid, and we're still saying, MVP. We're still saying his number will never be retired. So I think that conversation of it never being worn again is definitely something valid. Given the Ring of Honor is definitely valid. But when you look at when a number hangs on a rafter, there needs to be validity to it, and there needs to be a resume behind that. Now, 2 years to me, it just isn't long enough. And it's no shot at Tom. To come in year one and win a championship is amazing, and it's unheard of. But it's just that conversation of, like Tony said, like Godwin's done. When you look at it, Godwin's worn number 12. Godwin's won a championship, and Godwin's been there a lot longer. So how are you to say that Tom gets that number retired, but not Godwin? Like it's at the end of the day, I think it's just depending how you look at it and how you feel about it. I'm one of those guys that when I think of a number getting retired, I think it's more you have to have a long-term resume with them. Even Peyton Manning with the Colts, I think Tony could attest to it being in Indiana. I was even one of those guys that was like, if he wasn't there for as long as he was, I don't think you retire that number, even with the Super Bowl. So it's the fact that he was there for multiple years, several years, to where it's like, okay, I understand why you're going the way you're going about it. But 2 years to me, and one of them being a loss in the divisional round, and breaking a tablet. I just don't see it. I don't see it realistically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say one last question. Well, at least out of me. So what does he do now? Does he get back into football? Is he going crypto? What do you guys think
Golf.
is Brady's future?
That was actually going to be my next question is, what do you guys think? Do you think that Tom moves into like more of a coaching role maybe? Do you think he coaches like college? Do you think he coaches professional? Do you
I think Tom would be the weirdest coach in the world. Hey, I'm going to need everybody to line up before we walk out the tunnel. I'm going to give everyone a kiss on the lips before we get out of here, all right? And then he's going to kiss every single one of the players on the lips. He's going to be like, all right, game, baby.
Mike, that's only family. Calm down.
It's only sons.
Exactly. Now, do you think? Now, here's another interesting thing that we could potentially see Tom, and even there's rumors that Sean Payton could do this. Do you think Tom moves into maybe like TV broadcasting? Because every single network, you've got Fox, you've got CBS, you've got NBC. Even Amazon is supposed to be getting into the, really big into the NFL coverage. Do you think that he would be one of those integral parts for, say, Amazon? They say, hey, here's, $50 million, come be a sports analyst, come be a sports commentator for us. Even potentially with Troy Aikman, because Troy Aikman is supposed to be being lured away from Fox to be a part of the Amazon team. Do you think that would be something that Tom would follow, just to be like, hey, this is another way for me to get my name out there as being an integral part of something that's brand new and being, something that's established?
I think the hard part for me and really figuring out what he does next is I don't know what Giselle wants. Like, to me, this was a Giselle decision. There's nothing, and I think the difference between him and someone mentioned Brett Favre earlier, Brett Favre didn't want to go to training camp. Brett Favre didn't want to spend the time prepping and doing all this stuff. By all accounts, Brady loved it. up until this year. So I don't think it's a love of football thing. I think it's a family thing. And so it's hard for me to envision him being in a role, especially not this upcoming year where he's not in family. And I don't know where the family is based. I don't think they're still in New England. Maybe they're in LA or somewhere. So maybe if it's something he can do in his hometown, wherever his home is, I could see that. But I think as far as going on the road, being gone 2, maybe 3 days a week, I don't know how that works until they realize what it's like to be in the house with Tom Brady all the time. And when Tom Brady,
they're going to get tired of it very fast.
Right. When he can't, like people that are hyper focused like that, they need an outlet. And so if that becomes his parenting style or his husband style, I could foresee them being like, all right, he has to go. But I think whatever he can pick his price and he can pick his location. I don't think even Romo, and I love Romo, if Tom Brady comes to CBS and says, hey, I want this job, they find a way to get him out of there. So he'll have whatever he wants to do. He's a lot more vocal. He was on LeBron's The Shop, and he has a propensity to talk a lot more than I think the first 20 years of his career we thought he had. So I could see him getting into, I don't know necessarily a podcast, but some kind of space that is conducive to his home life. But I don't think he'll do anything that's requiring him to travel a lot in the near future.
Right. And that's where I was going to go with it. My bad, Tony. But,
oh, no, sorry. I was going to say, when Jay mentioned that, it kind of made me think, do you think that one of the other networks like CBS, NBC, or Fox pulls like what ESPN has done with the Manning brothers? Like do one of these like, hey, like, say on FS1 while like a Thursday night football game or something like that is going on, they have Tom Brady also watching the game, bringing on, other guests, everything like that, kind of talking, because again, he would be able to do it from home. He wouldn't be on the road, and he could still spend time with his family, and it would be, one night a week type thing.
And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, and Mike, you can too. I think Marshawn Lynch just got the Amazon something similar to that, I believe.
I heard something about. I didn't check out the details of it, but I definitely think there's a deal going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely think that could be kind of the new wave. Yahoo. I think Amazon said it was Marshawn, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes into that route. But sorry, I just wanted to share that.
No, you're good. But yeah, personally, I think Ray kind of touched on it. I don't think he goes that route at all. I think Tom is all about Tom, and I think it's full-blown podcasting. I could see Tom doing a podcast and doing a lot more than just football talk. I think football probably won't be the biggest outlet of that podcast. I think he talks about multiple things. Tom's one of those guys that kind of has his hands dipped in everything, whether that be stocks, whether that be golfing, whether that be just food and his lifestyle with his avocados, little diet and all that shit he's got going on, which I'm not knocking it, but I eat horribly. So I don't even know how to process that information when I hear it. But I wake up and eat a chocolate bar. So I have no idea what Tom Brady does. But I think podcasting is honestly the biggest thing that we're going to see. I think it's something where he can do it from home. Like you said, there's no real timeline of when he has to be there. He can do it at his own level, and he can do it. You guys act like winning championships is easy. It's not. Yeah, you would know. But it's definitely something to where I think Tom just goes straight to podcasting or having a show on YouTube or something along those lines. We've seen it already. He's on Instagram and TikTok at a very high level. And I think he does a great job. I don't know if you guys follow him on there, but he makes I'm not gonna lie to you, they're funny videos. Like they're not the greatest, but they're like, it's cheesy and it's corny and I love it and it's hilarious. I know Skip Bayless hates him. I know Shannon Sharp hates him, but I love them. I think they're funny. And if he could solely focus on that, I think it gets better. You could have him with guests like Manning and Breeze and Rodgers and so many others on there. And I think it would be a lot of fun. So I think Tom might go in the podcast.
And I know he's recently dropped his clothing line, which the shirts are grossly overpriced for me. But he has connections. He has Robert Kraft connections. He has Giselle in the fashion world connections. Like, he can get into any space I think he wants.
Right.
He has obviously
Giselle, he'd have nice clothes, but like you said, Ray, like little.
I mean, he had the Uggs deal. I don't know if he still does the Uggs thing. He has President Trump ties. Like, he can really go wherever he wants. Who do you guys think does his induction speech?
Ooh.
I say Rob, honestly.
Gronk?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, think about it. You touched on it when you said that Tom has been more vocal than he was the first 20 years. He didn't. You didn't really have that option as like a Patriots quarterback. You didn't have that option under the Bill Belichick era and the Bill
Right.
Belichick system. It was like you are a professional. You're either completely neutral, stone faced, or you're just kind of like salty and pissed off like
Right.
constantly. So he's had a little bit more freedom. We notice he's had a little bit more fun on social media and commercials, even in the games. He's had a lot more fun than what he did in New England. And there's a lot of people, especially when this first happened, and especially after the Bucks versus Patriots game. How does he feel about Bill? I think he and Bill do have a close connection. I think they do have a mutual respect for each other. But I don't know if Bill is necessarily the guy that he wants to give the speech.
Right.
Yoel said Edelman. I could see that. I could see Edelman. I could even see Wes Welker, because I mean he was kind of the original.
I think you
Julian
could see Randy Moss as well as definitely a possibility.
That was going to be another big name I could see, but to be honest, I think Gronk, because we've never really seen a connection between a quarterback and a tight end like this one that we saw in New England. The fact that he was able to get Gronk to come out of retirement to play for another 2 years and win a Super Bowl with him, the connection that they built and had, just the friendship that they had. I don't know if he has that big of a connection with any other player. Other than Gronk. Now, one thing Tom could do, he could pull a fast one and just be like, who I want to give my induction speech? Antonio Brown. And
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
I feel like that would just be one of those, like, what are you doing, Tom? Like, what? Everybody's going to be so confused. Like, what are you doing? But I could see Tom doing it just to kind of troll everybody.
Now, how would that work? Because him and Gronk, by all accounts, if Gronk retires, they'd go in together. So has that ever happened where an inductee speaks for another person being inducted at the same time?
I think it's definitely. I mean, it saves a lot of time and money. I mean, they're both going to be there. They're both going to be standing up there. So I mean, if anything, it's to the point to where, for me, Ray, I look at it like this, and it's no disrespect to Tom and anything he's doing, but who was really any of Tom Brady's friends? Who was someone that Tom really clicked with? I mean, him and Bill, they were on and off all the time. They were great competitors together, but I wouldn't say they were close like that. I think if we're really going to look at it, I think Kraft is someone that's definitely could be making the speech, because it's like he's like a father to him.
His dad.
His father.
He loves his dad.
He loves his dad. He's definitely a situation. But if we're looking at based off of players, Antonio Brown, definitely not. Randy Moss was so short-lived in New England, and it was just such a short period of time that I just don't think you would get enough stories out of that. It's a great name. Obviously, there's a lot of other guys like Edelman and so on and so forth that we can go with. But the only person that's really been there from beginning to end of their story together was Gronk. Gronk came in, and from the very beginning, he had Tom's back, and then all the way up until the end, both times, he comes out of retirement, breaks his ribs and his back for Tom again, just to get one final ring, one final dance. I think there's no one better than Gronk to do it. And I know he's not the most serious guy in the world, but I do think there will be a time where Gronk is serious in that speech, and he will have something important to say.
Yeah, and I think too, like what you said, Ray. We've never seen it done before, and again, why not Tom and Gronk be the first pair to do it, and again, just kind of set themselves apart as part of their legacy. That hey,
they might induct each other.
Yeah, and like Mike said, it saves time, it saves money, and hey, he's already here with me, and again, we're more than likely going to go in together. Their records as far as quarterback to tight end, touchdown catches, everything like that is going to be one that, again, stands the test of time for an extremely long time. So I could 100% easily see that happening.
Cool.
Now, who inducts Antonio Brown?
Tom Brady.
He's not going in.
But if he were, who's inducting him? I say Kanye West.
Actually, who would be great to induct Antonio Brown? His counterpart, Terrell Owens.
I think that's bad though, Tony, because it's so different. It's so different between the two. I don't know. I've heard that comparison, and I'm like, I don't know. Terrell always showed up to practice. Terrell was never acting a fool like that. I mean, he was vocal.
He was.
He was. I never seen Terrell take off his clothes and jump 50 feet in the air with a broken ankle, quote unquote broken ankle.
True.
I don't know. Antonio had the nice post about Ben, so maybe he's trying to win Ben over. Like I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest.
Right. All right, guys. Well, I think we're kind of coming towards the end here as far as this goes. Any last thoughts as far as Tom Brady retiring? Any last words you want to say as we say goodbye to basically the end of a 22-year era?
Nah, I've been talking to this fucking guy for 22 years. I'm good. I'm good.
I'll take a different approach. Nah, I just think I was telling my family as soon as we got the text, this is just, I guess I'm at that stage in life where this is going to keep happening for me. And this will be, I think, Tony, you kind of alluded to it, but I don't even think it's close. Is his impact as when you talk GOAT, and I think that phrase gets thrown out way, way too often. I think this is as close to an open and shut as you get.
Right.
I think what's really, really going to separate Tom from all the others, and I think some of the regular season records will fall with the extra game, and who knows, by then they might be playing 18 games. I think it's the playoff stuff. The playoff numbers that he has compiled that are eclipses most franchises. I think that's where it's going to be really tough for the Mahomes, for the Allens, for the Herberts, for the Burrows to compete. Like, I think those numbers, the Super Bowl numbers, those are the numbers that are going to really, really stand the test of time. And I think I'm confident in saying my grandkids will have stats will be put on their TVs or in their whatever the world looks like, their metaverses about Tom Brady, because I think those numbers will still reign. But heck of a run. Definitely appreciated all that he gave us up until his last game. And I wish him the best in whatever he gets himself into next. I'll tune in and see what it's like and go from there.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, as a fan, I'm ecstatic, and I know at least there's 30 other teams that are ecstatic. The Patriots and Buccaneers might not be as much, but 30 other teams are ecstatic that Tom Brady has retired. But much like what you said, Ray, he's done something that his legacy is going to stand forever. Even 50, 60, 70 years down the road, people are still going to have Tom Brady mentioned up there as far as one of the greatest quarterbacks. Even if people do eventually break his records, he's always going to be known as the guy that essentially set the bar for every quarterback from now moving forward, as far as one of the greatest to ever play. Whether you like Tom Brady or not, whether you go through the whole the Deflate Gate, the cheating scandal, everything like that. He still managed to win with or without all of that. His legacy, unless he does something just really crazy after he retires, his legacy is going to remain untouched. He's going to be one of the most winningest quarterbacks. Statistically, he's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to have ever played the game. So it is sad to an extent that Tom is retiring, because, like y'all said, he's been a part of this league for essentially ever. He's made an impact everywhere he goes. But again, I'm not exactly super upset personally that he's retiring, but from a sports standpoint, I am sad, because again, he always made the game interesting, and you knew as long as Tom Brady's on a team, they were always going to be competing for a championship. So I think we can kind of all agree, hats off to Tom Brady. Enjoy retirement. Please don't come back. Do not pull one of those come back after like 2 years. Just stay retired.
For what it's worth, I agree. Like, let it be what it's going to be. Like, this is it. Just go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. All righty, y'all. Well, again, thank you all for tuning in as far as joining us for the breaking news that Tom Brady has retired.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Schefter put out something from Tom Brady's agent, Don Yee. Says, I understand the advanced speculation about Tom's future without getting into the accuracy or inaccuracy of what's being reported. Tom will be the only person to express his plans with complete accuracy. He knows the realities of the football business and planning calendar as well as anybody, so that should be soon.
So we should.
I think I said this, I think, on the other show. I think it's legit. I just think Tom wanted to be the one to put it out, which is why I said it was weird that there was no video. So I think that's being worked on, but this is the world we live in. So
yeah, for sure. And I think it's one of those. It's kind of like with Big Ben. Like, everybody kind of knew But like you said, I think Tom does want to be the one to put it out. I think he will kind of make it a bigger thing because it is a big deal. He's not going to be the type of quarterback that just kind of bows out silently. I don't think he'll be an extravagantly big deal as far as what he does to officially submit his retirement. But I still think it'll be a big thing nonetheless. But yeah, again, guys, it's been fun. We'll probably cover this again when he officially covers it and puts it out there. But again, for the most part, we're 90% sure Tom Brady has officially retired.
Yeah, I think it's a done deal.
Yeah, I do too.
Alrighty, y'all. Well, this has been another great episode with y'all. Thank y'all for joining us here on the network. Shout out to Ray. Appreciate you being able to hop on. Same with Mike. As always, it's been a blast. Do want to throw one quick thing out. Michigan State beat Tom Brady's Michigan in basketball wholeheartedly. And I'm ecstatic about that. So that's just
beat them good too.
Yeah, they did, especially in the second half. Ooh, it was ugly. First half, I was like, dang, Michigan's aggressive. And then they flopped in the second. I wasn't really upset. I wasn't upset at all.
Love that for you, Tony. Love that for you.
Right. I appreciate that, buddy. I do. Alrighty, y'all. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and peace out. Y'all have a good rest of your day.
Yes, sir.
And we will
enjoy
see
this
y'all
football tomorrow.
Yep, and we got the championship games tomorrow, so it's gonna be a good weekend. It's gonna be
tomorrow's day one, boys. Tom Brady-less football for the rest of our lives.
Day one.
There it is.
One.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we're making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.